Thank you, Joanne, and good day, everyone. Wherever you're right here in the Zoom session, Zoom meeting, or if you're dialing in from anywhere, good day from all of our panelists. So today we are going to be talking about the impact of generative AI on you. So unless we have been hidden somewhere, the space aliens have abducted us, it is hard to escape the bombardment of news about AGI and generative AI and ChatGPT and DALL-E, and it goes on. On the one hand, you see all the hyperbole about how it has the potential to dramatically transform the way we live, the way we work. And the other hand, you also find these very fear-mongering essays about and statistics about how it is going to take away millions and millions of jobs and humanity is going to be left high and dry. So what we are going to do with the help of my esteemed panelists, I am going to draw on their experience to bring it a little closer, how generative AI has been impacting on us individuals as well as on the globe. So we are going to talk about it. Generative AI's impact on us as an individual, as in our community of artists, community of technologists, community of writers, and to the bigger community, humanity, and we'll reflect on what we have learned from our experiences and what we need to be watchful for. I am joined by some amazing individuals. I couldn't be happier. I'm eager to listen to their views also. Let me first, they have amazing biographies. I will not be able to do justice. Even I will take the entire 45 minutes to read out there. But something that struck me about Cortney Wall is a trailblazer. She's one of the few sports artists, and I started looking at her paintings. I love the one you're done about tennis, and the thing that struck me, and it is very important and relevant, is I want to make sure she is most proud of her partnership with Fanatics and a proud philanthropic partner with the Women's Sports Museum, of which she's also on the board of directors. I wanted to call on that. I know all of us, in addition to wearing the hat we do on a daily basis in a professional manner, we do many things. And I thought this was wonderful, Cortney. I can't wait to see your paintings right online in that museum. And next we are joined by Marina. Marina holds the job as technical program manager at Meta, but she has been an observer and an actor in 22 decades of work in AI and entrepreneurship. So I think she and I probably know the winter of AI and the renaissance that has emerged just in the last little less than 15 years in the last decade. So it's going to be great hearing from Marina, the grounded view of the hyperbole and the fear. So last but not the least, Usha Jagannathan, Dr. Usha Jagannathan. She holds a PhD in technology and e-learning and ex-McKinsey.
Yes, that's correct.
He has tremendous thought leadership in terms of deeply thinking about the issues concerning AI ethics. So I am very eager to call on Usha as we go through this panel discussion to reflect on her, to share her views. So our panel, and I would like to invite the participants as we are discussing, please feel free to put on chat how you are using ChatGPT or Bard, whatever, or DALL-E. Each of us has already begun using it. Are you using it in your writing, blogs? Are you using it in creating artwork? Are you helping your son or your children in doing their homework? Whatever the use case may be, we would love to hear so all of us can learn from how innovatively we are using. So Cortney, Marina, Usha, so the floor is yours. How is generative AI impacting on you, the individual, your family? Cortney?
Sure. Well, I'm pretty new to AI, but having, being in a community of artists and learning about it collectively, I can say that a lot of us are experimenting with it and have been over the last several months, or at least since the beginning of this year. And ChatGPT is very interesting in itself, as is Midjourney. And I also run the podcast for the Women's Sports Museum. So I've been using ChatGPT in some cases to come up with questions when I feel stumped, or when I'm doing some of the prep work for certain interviews to try to gather more information if that subject is notable and has, at least is somebody well known. So that's one area. I've been using ChatGPT as well for crafting pitches and proposals to major brands that I want to partner with. And in some cases, I just started doing that as an experiment just to see what ChatGPT would come up with. And I was pretty blown away. I didn't have high expectations in the beginning, but after seeing some of the results that were generated just through the questions I was asking, and then how specific you can tailor them down to, whether it's creating a proposal within 200 words or 5 different pitches crafted towards one specific subject that is a well-known brand, then I've really been impressed to see it's helped to expand my mind in terms of how you can approach different businesses and how you can sell yourself in some ways. Because, from the last panel, I thought that was a really beautiful point that I think it was Kai had made about relationships. And I think that's paramount, but sometimes just getting your foot in the door and establishing that connection is really important too. So I think there's a little bit of a double-edged sword there. Like, you don't want to lose the personal touch. I don't ever submit anything without editing it and really crafting it in my own way. But I will say there's a lot to say about what you can do with ChatGPT.
Hold on to the thought. We'll come back and reflect on the pros and cons. So Marina, how have you been using and
how I've been using ChatGPT? It's impacted me in a variety of ways. First of all, I was very validated to see the AI winter, like you alluded to, had finally passed, and now everybody's aware of what language models are, or at least more people than before, for sure. I've also, like Cortney, started experimenting right away, even though I've done a little bit of research with language models previously. I think what's happened with ChatGPT is that it's taken everybody's imagination sort of in my vicinity by storm, to such an extent that the most impactful thing is just our sort of what we talk about day to day has changed. I think it's become a tool that I certainly go to ask questions. I prefer to go there before I go to Google, for example. I mean, there's definitely accuracy issues and there's things like that, but I think if I want to understand the vast space of something I don't know anything about, it gives me sort of a framework, right? It might be skimpy on details and sometimes it hallucinates, so I never trust it completely, and nor would I ever use it for that. But I think learning about something new, like, for example, how do you explain ChatGPT to a 5-year-old? How do you explain to a 10-year-old? How would you explain it to a room of PhDs in neuroscience or physics, right? It is able to generate those answers. So the creative ability of this set of tools has taken my imagination to places, I only thought were sort of going to stay there, right? Because for many years it was very cold in the land of AI. It was really chilly. I think so. How I use it besides that. So I at work, obviously, ChatGPT is a huge, not ChatGPT, but language models have been used at Meta extensively. So it changes my roles of everybody, I think, is fair to say. But on a personal level, again, I summarize texts. I generally generate images just for fun, a lot of experimenting. One thing that I think is really funny, if my husband is not clear on something, and I ask GPT write him an email in the language of a legal image, like to pick up your socks, and then spits out 3 paragraphs. There's a lot of fun to be had there as well. It generates jokes, and you really are able to see something that I think I couldn't see before, which again is sort of explodes my imagination in terms that it is a creative interface in many ways.
Marina. So, Usha, we heard writing pitches and sales material and jokes and music. And what about music and video? So, Usha, what have you been experiment with this?
Thank you, Chitra, for having me here, and also to Chaya and the team. Culminating from all three of you, what you were saying, like unless we have been abducted by aliens, or or we are in somewhere in like completely like away from not knowing. I am also blown away with what this generative AI can do. Of course, I also use for pitches, for presentation, and also I tailor. You can use for tailoring your resume or tailoring your writing like nominations or recommendation letters to people that you're writing for all of those. And also, if it needs to limit to certain words, if you're writing certain articles, I always use that. And since November 22, we have been using it, right? So we were in waiting lists and started using it. And I've also used for creating small POCs, like how, because as a technologist, I have to use that to quickly and easily create some prototypes of what the ideas that we get. Since I'm coming from an innovation background, for innovation to generate any POCs, I went with GPT-2, not with 3 or 4, because every set that you go with, it's a massive data set. You have to be cognizant of the sustainable practices that we use as well. And also I use for code reviews. So I would not recommend, I know there are a lot of students in here, I wouldn't recommend you to, take the problem, plug it in and add the code. That is not a good programming practice, in the sense like not a good practice, even if you're, because you're learning and you want to know how the syntax, everything works. But definitely use it if you have some errors, put it in, review the code for any potential errors, and then fix that code. So, and also for planning, for fun way, like when Marina and Cortney were talking about, for the fun way is like, okay, how I'm going to hold my 16-year-old son's birthday party, and he's a boy, and what would they like? So it can give you several ideas, like, because if they want to, if I told him, oh, I can call you for a swim party, he doesn't want it. So what other ideas that it can generate? It gave some fabulous ideas to plan. And also I use quite a lot the Gen AI for both for bias detection and the hallucination detection, because before going to mitigate it, we first need to know how we can detect it from the data set. And that is the toughest part, I would say. Once we detect that, then mitigating through the code is much easier to handle, lesser challenge to handle. So these are the areas that I feel like it has impacted. And definitely, you all might have heard about the hedgehog, beautiful pictures in the DALL-E tree, where the ChatGPT and the Midjourney together. And I'm sure Cortney would love that because you can create such beautiful pictures, and I can't wait to try that as well. Thank you, Chitra.
One thing that comes loud and clear is that, right, we used to go, taking your example of party planning, we used to go and say, okay, which are the trusted blogs that we normally gravitate to and we read. Now we don't have the patience for it. With ChatGPT, I think we are just saying, okay, we are putting a question and it is giving you a collective wisdom of the many in terms of generating that plan.
Right.
I even heard people using it in terms of generating the first draft of blogs that they wanted to do. Cortney, another one I heard was just this person wanted to create a newsletter, and they are using that ChatGPT to create check the grammar and the punctuation. So fascinating use cases, and I hope I'm trying to check whether our audience has been used in circumstances, in situations that we haven't entered. Yeah. Oh, she's using. Shalini had written here. She uses ChatGPT as her assistant. So this is all about, right, where we have gone from automating using rules to automating using intelligence, some of the core creative tasks, whether it is we are creating new text or combined text rather, and creating images, music, and video. So let's step a little bit, let's expand our circle of view analysis and say, how are you seeing, what are you hearing from the marketplace, from your community, how it is having an impact, real impact in terms of these cohorts, whether they are writers, artists, or bloggers, or technologists. Marina, how are they? Coding, you brought up the coding, very important. So what are you seeing as trends? Are they embracing it, or do you see a little bit of reticence? So Marina, can you start us with what you're seeing is happening in a community of like-minded users?
Yeah, I can speak to very broadly. I think in terms of technologists and work in general. While in Meta, people have been aware and using large language models for a while, and it's a huge research contributor to open source and tools at large. I think it's become, again, a topic of conversation at work because it affects what we do on a day-to-day basis amongst all job classes, amongst all, everybody's impacted in one way or another. At the very least, by beginning to think of how this is going to shape the future of work and how it's shaping it already. And not specifically how things evolve very, very quickly. So you can see these changes take root very quickly and expanding and evolving in real time. So it's fascinating. So the other part of community that I am is I'm a parent. So my son is in high school, and he is asking to have a way to use ChatGPT ethically, a way to he's not asking, they're having this conversation at school. And this is something that's also coming up in terms of the use of technology, and also what the guidelines are. And so things that he's playing with and we're discussing as parents is, well, what are those guidelines? And we asked ChatGPT to create us guidelines for the use of ChatGPT. It's a little bit of I know. And it's hilarious. It gets really, really sort of loopy. I think in general, and we probably will touch on that later when we talk about sort of larger scope of things. It's a fundamental shift of how we think about the future, how I think about the future. It's sort of taken all assumptions about what to do next. In terms of this is the expected career path, again, thinking about as a parent, like this is what I would advise my child. There isn't really anything at this point that I can say with certainty this career is going to be there 10 years from now, 20 years from now, or 5 years from now. And the timeline and the fact that the community and everything is building so quickly, exponentially almost, right? Since November, it's taken everybody by storm. Even if you look at the VC activity, which is sort of one of the markers of how things are going, right? No one is really quite sure where that market is going. And I think it speaks to a really a paradigm shift, and I think is how we think about things. So it's affecting everything. But more than anything, I think it's a chance to kind of look back and say, well, again, taking my son as context, I don't know what's going to be guaranteed. I just know that you need to focus on what you're passionate about, and the tools will provide the means for you to make that a reality in one way or another. And another thing I'll say very quickly before handing it off, incredible excitement about building companies again. So again, your previous panelist was an entrepreneur, and my mind is just a buzz about the opportunities and what would take 5 to 10 months to build something. Now it can take a week with the tools that we now have, or less, right? So that timeline is shrinking. So I'll stop there.
Very good, Marina. Before I react to say many of the points you made there, so Cortney, what are you seeing? What can you share? Because it's one thing to read what's published, but it's another thing to observe in your workplace, in your environment, what is happening. That is real, because people are talking to you about their palpable fears or their excitement, wild excitement, whichever the case may be.
Sure. Well, I know a lot of artists are using it for in a variety of ways. For one, some are using it to create PDFs as lead magnets for their website to try to build their email list and collector bases, whether it's coming up with sort of like a little online ebook that they can sell or give away. And then others are really using it largely for social media posts and for kind of like having a personal assistant in that regard, in terms of crafting, 5 different ways to share your the work that you do, because it really is, as an artist, so much about staying in front of people and resharing content that in different ways to engage your audience and tap them from different social media channels, and your email list included, to keep their attention. So then you have Midjourney, as Usha had mentioned, which a lot of artists, I'm just getting into myself, but I'm in a network of artists that have been using it and really have been thrilled with some of the work that's been returned to them. Now, I know there probably are artists who take the work that comes through Midjourney. So for those who don't know Midjourney, you can basically have AI create an entire AI image for you that essentially is, that's generated through this platform called Midjourney. And most of the artists that I am in a network with really use it as inspiration for a mural that they're creating or a proposal that they're about to prepare for a client. So they're using it to craft ideas and to sort of get a base to work off of, whether they're importing that into Procreate or Photoshop, Illustrator, you name it. It's kind of a resource for them. So I think it's still new for a lot of us. There is, of course, a risk as to what happens with our own images and how they get circulated. I haven't really heard very much concern expressed from the artist group collective that I'm a part of. But I think it could be something down the road that we would all be, concerned about. Let's say you find your image popping up as an AI image elsewhere, or something very close to that. So how do you protect yourself legally? That would definitely be a concern that we have. And for now, I think it's fun to explore, but I think we have to kind of tread carefully as we go.
I think we'll miss not having writer's block or artist block.
Yes, it does eliminate artist block and writer's block, for that matter. That's a good
all
point.
Those blogs we used to do. Okay, how do I get out of my writer's block? Is that
exactly?
Yeah. So, Usha, tell us what you're seeing in the circle at McKinsey, or in the consulting firms. Where are really, there are so many enterprise use cases. Where do they think that some of the use cases will really take hold?
Okay, yeah. So since we are addressing the community side, I want to talk starting with the community, and then I can go to the business side of it. So, but great examples of what Cortney and Marina shared. First we need to be cognizant of what we did. I went to Voice and AI conference a couple of weeks ago at Washington DC, where we did a poll where we did we're saying who has never used it yet or starting to use, and who is testing and experimenting it, and who are all putting LLMs in productions. So this is for both technical, non-technical audience, for people who have been, interacting with Gen AI in their business workplace. And 90% of them said they are testing and experimenting, and 10% said LLMs in production. Nobody said they have never used it or never heard it. So, which, it justifies the point what Chitra said. So, so everybody is aware of it. But what I'm trying to convey here is, it's not like as soon as we see some hype, and this has gone beyond the hype now, and we all are so glued to this. But we have to be very cognizant of, because it's using such computing intensive resources, Gen AI, than what can be leveraged with regular AI. We have to make sure, whether this use case, whatever the use case that you're working on, does it really need Gen AI? And find that out and do that analysis, feasibility study, and only if that is needed, integrate Gen AI. Else, do not leverage LLM. The reason is, but why would we need that and make that and make that like regular AI versus Gen AI. So because if you're leveraging AI, or many of the businesses are leveraging today, and then it's for like it's involving classification, regression, or it could be clustering, right? So the normal AI without using the Gen AI capability, we could still be able to do personalization tasks. But what we cannot do in here, it might not be well suited for tasks that you're generating if you want to generate new content, right? So that is what the beauty of the Gen AI, where you can be able to generate new content, human-like content, and make the predictions based on however complex your data patterns are. So, and so that's the thing that you should keep in mind here in the audience. If students or upcoming job seekers, make sure that we really need to use Gen AI. And let's say that your company uses Gen AI to create some personalized recommendation. Then you can use that to use it within your own data set, so that you can be able to see whether that is going to help you significantly increase or better with increase with the sales, so that you can justify the cost of the computing. So it's a trade-off, right? So, but you have to make sure like, oh, okay, I am increasing the sales for the business. So I can trade off with the cost of computing. That's what when we say net zero with the climate, it's not like we are achieving net zero. It's like, it's a balance, right? You know, what the resources that you're using, the carbon footprint, whether we are offsetting that equal amount. That's what it is, right? So you want to make sure that is there. And I want to bring one example when we talk about the community. Mm-hmm. So very recently, there was I do volunteering for reducing food waste during every other weekend. So there was a nonprofit who came to us saying like, okay, we are having issues with increasing the efficiency, how we can improve the efficiency of their food distribution. And I was thinking, so I was contemplating, can't they be able to use with using AI, and why did they want to go with Gen AI? And then I looked into that data set and saw that, okay, they want to see, like, they want to reduce the cost. They want to make sure like how they can attract more people in the community, but they are not reducing the cost. They are selling 70 pounds for $10. So when they are doing it for economically challenged people, they want to see how they can leverage Gen AI. So I looked it up and saw, okay, they could be able to create more targeted marketing campaigns and develop some new services that are more tailored to, okay, which location more customers come. And, they could be able to train the data set with using GPT-2 or 3, within their own data set. And it was marvelous that they were able to find out which of those zip codes within Phoenix that they were able to target and get more revenue, because they need the revenue in order to generate, run their business, even though it's a nonprofit. So that was a fabulous. And just pivoting a little bit, not to take too much time, into the business side of it. What I'm seeing, since coming from McKinsey, what I'm noticing is like, you see like majority of the companies today, they are using they are using Gen AI for their personalized recommendations. You take Netflix, you take different, you take, tech giants, or you take like cloud giants, retail giants like Amazon, Walmart, all of them, they are using leveraging Gen AI because it's a new one, but they have already started testing and experimenting, right? But one example I would like to give, there was a QSR client who wanted to know how to leverage, how to introduce personalized recommendation. And for that, I'm proud to say I was able to put together a AI ethics framework for them. But at the same time, you need to find out from a business perspective, is this personalized menu recommendation for their, for QSR is the restaurant client I'm talking about. So whether do they really need to power it with Gen AI? And by doing that, is that going to increase their profit? And will they also have you should even though if you're in a business point of view, you should not think only about profit revenue. You should also see, what is the competitive advantage, right? What is the differentiation? And making sure that you are, and even though you're an established chain, you want to make sure that how you are, that customer obsession, how you are addressing the customer needs. That is the primary point.
Yeah, you're bringing up this intellectual property protection, right? I think
Exactly.
Which is probably you're seeing now already in the press about lawsuits being.
Yes.
One thing about generative AI is using internet scale data that we have all written and contributed, and our ancestors and our all of the wonderful writers. So things are still shaking out.
It is.
Things I want to line up for our next.
I will pause it here. Yeah.
Next, because I think the points you made lead up to it. Marina made this point about her son using, right, and the son's community, and I grapple with that, and I want to tee up this point. I think given now, for example, the seniors all around the country probably some of them are using ChatGPT to write their college essays. There is a question now here, right? First of all, what will happen to this whole notion of college essays, which is supposed to give a very personal view into perspective of how they look at life and how they look at various things. Setting that aside, I started thinking, as researchers and scientists, we are ethically bound to cite the sources of information in everything we refer. So would we get to a point where when we write a blog or create an artwork, using any of the generative AI techniques or LLMs, should we be actually saying, should we be citing inspired by DALL-E or inspired by ChatGPT? So we are making, yes, it is ours, but the original source, there was the first draft was perhaps produced by that. I'm hoping we get to that. Otherwise, it feels like that we are drawing on using this technology. We are drawing on the collective wisdom of a humanity, and we are not giving credit to those people who have contributed to that. So that takes us very nicely to the last. I think I'm looking at the time. So can you now reflect on the broader, take the most global macro view of the humanity? Because this is where the issues of job loss or what it means to be creative and original as a human being, all this now are up in the air in terms of debate. So Cortney, do you, given artistic and we're all looking,
I think you brought up a brilliant point, honestly, Chitra, which is, and I flash forward and say, will we see an artist one day sell their work for millions of dollars and it's completely generated by Midjourney? Is it possible? I wouldn't say it's not possible. There's also, you might have heard the term steal like an artist. Well, that would apply very well to, I think, this concept here with Midjourney and what could potentially take place. Where did those images originally come from? How Midjourney obviously gathered it from somewhere to have been inspired and to have created it essentially, even since it is pretty much a collection. Correct me if I'm wrong, Marina and Usha. Pretty much inspired by images throughout the internet, so that it's generating this work from. So that's one concept. Then you also have, I really love your idea, honestly, saying inspired by Midjourney or inspired by, X number of artists included with, wherever that image came from. It's such a fine line when it comes to original artwork as is.
We'll say heard for the first time here.
Yes, exactly. Because if you take a painting that's not inspired by Midjourney, and I paint a lot of professional athletes for work that I do, and an original, as long as you can work off of a photo, any professional photo that you find anywhere, and if anyone who takes you to court for that original, the artist will 99.9% of the time win, based on the fact that it is their own creation and a one of one that artist created. So the lines are so blurry right now when it comes to taking that a step further with Midjourney that I think we could be really in muddy waters. And even if right now we're just using it as inspiration or using it as a guide in some ways. So I think there is some unknown as far as where we go with that, and especially what an artist's claim is. I mean, how do you defend yourself if that is the case? It's a necessary evil to have to put your artwork out there on the internet and to share it across multiple platforms. Not originally, but essentially for you to get viewership, to attract customers, and to grow your audience. But then at the same time, it's public information and it's no longer really being protected unless there's a watermark on it. So that's kind of where I get stumped. I will leave you with that.
These questions are still, I think, too early to any pronouncement we'll make. The technology will often frequently prove us wrong.
Yeah.
Marina, can you reflect on, especially on the coding? I keep thinking, will we be seeing articles like, X company let go of people because now they can use generative AI to generate code? That's a real possibility, right? So what are you seeing? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's still very much an experiment. There's an argument to be made and the question to be asked. If we can, the ramp up to learning, which is essentially what the code tools are allowing us to do, is you generate, like, as opposed to learning how to write Hello World in a couple of days on CS class 101, right? Now you just ask it to type it up for you and it generates snippets of code. And so the idea is that the ramp up to learning is much, much quicker. So does that translate into, do we have fewer engineers or do we have more engineers and just build more things? Right. And also the quality of the code, and the artistry of the code, all of these arguments can be made, right? So I think there isn't any one pattern that I'm seeing. In my personal experience, I was a software engineer before and took a break, and to be really good, you have to be really in it. Except that used to be true. That is no longer true. That's the most personal thing that I would say, is that you're now able to access and produce very, very quickly. So since it's a question about fundamental changes and shifts, I think the answer is going to be evolving, and it's going to be different for every organization. The one thing that I absolutely see in the entrepreneurial space is that for me to start a company when I started my own company I'm not going to say when, a few years ago before ChatGPT, we thought about hiring engineers. We thought about hiring tens of engineers to build something. Now I can sit down and with a matter of days, I can have a foundational piece to build something, and not even days, if it depends on complexity. So I think the time to market for initial startups and these MVPs and sort of the ramp up to get on for entrepreneurship is much, much quicker in a way that I could not have been before these tools really came out. To your larger point, and again, speaking as someone who's sort of been in the back, kind of observing the winters, the bumps and the this and the this, it's very exciting to see the biggest change. I think is fundamentally how we think about ourselves and how we really think about sort of the paradigm shift from this is a career path, again, alluding to what we touched on earlier. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to be doing for the next 10, 15 years, to all of a sudden, I have no idea whether this is going to be here. I have no idea whether this opportunity is going to exist. So the fundamental question then becomes, well, what is important to me? What do I want to see? And with generative AI tools specifically, what do I want to build? Because the things that I can have in my hands now, I never could have with the speed that I have, with the power that I have. And touching on, since this is a SheTek conference, I think being limited by sort of these paradigms of what it means to be a woman in tech, what it meant to be a woman in tech, it's kind of gone. The field is level. There is no authority. No one knows what this thing can do. And no one has control over it, and there's a lot of people trying, right? And so you can play off, well, what's going to happen? And I think the thing why this time right now in this panel is very exciting, because every person on this panel has within them, because what we're hearing now, what we're seeing now in the time where we're living in right now, the tools that we have, it's juxtaposition of all of these different things that could never have come before. That we're at the very, very nascent stage where each person in this conference call, if we choose to pick any one thing to focus on within the space of generative AI, which is now going to become every space because it's going to affect everything, we'll have an opportunity to shift life as we know it for their chosen, certainly their lives.
I love your optimism. And I also think, as you said, it's up for grabs. If we don't lean in and leverage this opportunity that is there, it's very early to influence and shape and take it in the directions that each of us can we believe in. So we have a couple of minutes left, and I loved Marina, brought it to what people who have who are listening to us can walk away with. Usha, what would be one advice? I know you have to keep it very quick. Is that you would give for men and women who are listening to this particular panel, must do to increase their skill set, or they want to try out? What would be the advice you give them?
Yeah, sure. I'm not on mute. Okay. So use Gen AI don't use Gen AI for tasks that require like precision, like accuracy and reliability. Always, that could be misleading results. That could be the Gen AI could have fabricated information. So because it's not trained on high quality data, right? So it's like it takes the data, and even if you're in the same session, it takes what you have written in the previous information and takes that and fabricate that data and provide you that information, right? So I wouldn't say all the information is fabricated, but still always cite your sources, check whether, because the other day I said okay, list 5 articles what Usha has written in 2022, and it fabricated 3 different sources, which I had not written the articles. So always check on Google Scholar or somewhere whether these articles were really written by these people, and then or any other sources that you rely on, and go for it. And also make sure when you use Gen AI, that ethical consideration come to play. So embrace AI for creativity, how you can wield that power of it responsibly, because the responsible AI is kind of a shared responsibility now, right? So and make sure human is in the loop. Anything that you develop, there is a human in the loop. And since there are many students here, for academic integrity, make sure it might write even human-like content it writes, but always have that conscience, because there are tools that besides Turnitin today, there are many tools they can detect, saying whether you have created this essay or answers through ChatGPT.
Yeah,
so
beautiful advice. I think we haven't even we tip of the iceberg. We didn't cover the AI Act.
Exactly.
There's so much going on. But this is a time for us to take part, be engaged, be involved, but and use that responsibly in the ways we feel comfortable. Yes. And you're also talking to making an important point about double check what's being produced, what's being generated. So thank you, panelists. Thank you, Cortney. That was amazing. Marina, for weighing in, and Usha, thank you for sharing all your experiences.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.